Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Psychology and Spirituality, a Bridge to a Better Life discussion. I'm your host, Marcia Trajano, and with me are Dr. Anahy Fonseca and Jussara Korngold. It is indeed so good to have you back with this conversation. Today, we're going to have a very, for me, quite difficult topic about pain and suffering. So I just want us to see how we can break down this topic through the vein of psychology and spirituality. But for those of you who are coming to this episode, and this is your first time, please note that our program, the Psychology and Spirituality Weekly Talks, are based on the works by Joanna de Angelis. They offer a safe space for us to do exactly what we're doing today: confront, compare, correlate, and even expand concepts from a psychological lens so that you and I, all of us, can access maybe some insights, some actionable tips, and real world advice to help us through our lives. Please note that our program is sponsored by AMI Brasil, Mansão do Caminho, the International Spiritist Council, and United States Spiritist Federation. Make sure you hit subscribe if you haven't already done so. We'd love to hear from you. So write down your notes, your questions, your feedback. We'd love to see that. But here we are. Hello, Anahy. Hello, Jussara. And I wanted to say that this topic is quite unsettling to me. And I was trying to see how to even approach it, right? But there's a song that came to my mind. And in that song, and I'm going to maybe perhaps ask you, Jussara, to maybe speak about it because it may open the space for our discussion, right? I don't know if you know Coldplay. Coldplay is a British rock band from London, and in the I believe late 1990s, they did beautiful songs, and they have one that is quite the one that can get stuck in your mind, right? It starts with "I used to rule the world." Forgive for my awful voice, but I wanted to. There is a one part of the lyrics of the song that I wanted perhaps just out of for you to talk about it, and it's very deep because in there they sing, "One minute I held the key, next the walls were closed on me, and I discovered that my castles stand upon pillars of salt and pillars of sand." That is quite difficult for us to even start to listen to the story of us being on the top of the world, whatever is your role, and losing it all. Jussara, can you speak to that, if you don't mind?
Sure, of course, everything that we are going to be talking about the song now is our interpretation because we cannot say for sure what the author was actually thinking about when he wrote that. But of course, when you use words and there is this very subjective way of each one of us hearing or reading the words, it's a different thing. So depending on the angle that we are going to be going, of course that may have a different perspective. So we can even start with the since you read this paragraph, we can even talk about the title of the song, Viva la Vida, right?
Right.
So what kind of vida life is she talking about here? But what kind of celebration, or is he saying that that was his way of conducting his life? Just going easy about things, like he says here. 1 minute I held the key, so I'm there, living the life and
Yes.
celebrating the life as we understand from the material perspective. And only to later realize that he had the key, but he couldn't open the doors, and the castles that he thought belonged to him were actually built upon pillars of salt and
Hmm.
so in my perspective, bringing this to the subject that we are studying today, pain and suffering, I would say that this would be exactly the reason why we go through pain and suffering.
Mm-hmm.
Because, in this common expression here, you put all your chips in one place, and I mean,
Yes.
you go with the illusion, and not necessarily you are, doing what is right. So, like here, symbolic, he's saying, I held the key, but I thought I had castles. Now I don't have a house. I don't
Yes.
have where to be. And I think that from this perspective, um, of how we lose track, or do not want to get the knowledge to know that we are so much more than just what it strikes the eyes, is what will bring us those frustrations, disappointments. But I thought I was sure that I was doing, a good thing. And all of a sudden, like sometimes we hear um, of people, thinking, oh, I'm sure that I'm going to heaven because with all the charity that I'm doing. But when you look closely, are you sure about it? So I would start with that, and maybe Anahy can bring more contributions.
Yeah, and I love Anaí before you get in, because I'd love to hear from you a view from your background as a Jungian analyst of what does it mean, right? Pain and suffering from a medical perspective, perhaps. But to me, it brings what you brought here, Jussara, is the premise that we don't die, right? But we live as if we did. And I say, well, yeah, we die. We die. We all die from a physical death, but we don't die from our spiritual, immortal life. Therefore, the question of impermanence, or the inability to control life, it is leading to a lot of suffering, a lot of pain. I would say it's staggering, the statistics on how many, especially the younger generation. I'm saying that because I'm not so young anymore, but that younger generations are suffering from anxiety. And anxiety is just that, right? It's the inability to have a sense of peace, because you cannot control the outcome of today. Therefore, that suffering that you alluded to through the Coldplay lyrics of this beautiful song, by the way, it's stuck in my mind, by the way. It brings to us this question of impermanence. But Anna, can you maybe define what is the difference between pain and suffering from your perspective, number one? And number two is, why do we have to suffer?
Okay, so first of all, it's a pleasure to be here again with you, and to with everybody who is listening to this podcast like talk. And of course, as a psychiatrist and also a Jungian analyst, so the MDs are always worried about pain and trying to, with medication, diagnosis, trying to heal people, right? But one thing that our medicine, that is based in evidence, we say nowadays, but I always keep telling my colleagues that which evidence are we looking at? For instance, spirituality and religion and spirituality, but religion in a sense of a practice that helps people to connect to the transcendent, whoever or however and whatever people conceive as the transcendence, as a transcendence, or let's say God. But especially spirituality, that it's the search, as Jung says, the search for meaning and purpose, and also the research they show in psychiatry and in medicine that people that search for meaning and purpose in life, so we could say, as Jung says, that develop spirituality, because spirituality for Jung was the search for meaning, right, and purpose. So people who do that and develop their own spirituality, they are healthier and they suffer less. And when they, for instance, they get ill, so we could say, to start thinking about this, that for us, many times in medicine and healthcare, pain would be related to physical pain or mental pain, emotional pain that can cause physical also distress and illnesses. So, okay, so we don't want people feeling pain, and people come to us like, relieve my pain, please. But what happens is that if we just give people medicine, for instance, if we don't listen to people, if we don't have a broader, we say we are using this holistic view, right? A broader view of the person, because we are so complex. And we are getting to Joanna de Angelis' beautiful teachings. So we are so complex. We have the physical body, we have the mind, the emotions, our thoughts. That are the mind is kind of related to the brain, but it's not necessarily dependent upon. And we have our spirit, we have our soul, our psyche, right? And the soul, the manifestation of the spirit here in this life, let's say. So, okay, we are going to feel pain, as Joanna de Angelis says. It's like it's from this life, to be in a body of flesh and to have to adapt to this material world. We are going to feel physical pain, decaying of the physical, for instance, of our organs. It's unavoidable, as Joanna de Angelis say. So we are going to feel pain, physical, at some point in our lives, at least. We are going to feel emotional pain because we are going to be in relationships. We are going to feel hurt. We are going to hurt others. It's part of our learning, right? We cannot avoid pain, but we can learn with pain. We can listen to the pain. We can try to understand the pain. Joanna is asking us to do that. And we can then get to know ourselves a little better. And because we are captain of our own ships, right? So we are not, oh, I need some medication. I need someone to, to heal my pain, because we can do that.
Can
Of
I add
course, at
something?
some point,
Yeah.
we need a medical doctor. Yes,
No,
please
no, no,
go
go ahead
ahead.
and finish. I was just going to add something, but go ahead. Sorry for the interruption.
Okay, no problem. So, and also the emotional pain, Jung says that there is no birth of consciousness without pain, because then he's talking about a pain that is the result of a conflict, an inner conflict. So, Joanna is always trying to show us the importance of self-analysis, of self-discovery, of understanding ourselves better, better understanding ourselves. So we have to do this in a physical way. We have to, for instance, even in high school, I think, elementary school probably, we are learning about our bodies, right? It's very important. We need to know ourselves. We need to know how to feed ourselves with good, nutritious food, things like that. We have to sleep better. People are not sleeping very well these days. We have to exercise, everything that we know nowadays that will help our bodies to be healthy, or even if there's an imbalance, to heal our bodies. And we have to pay attention to our emotions and thoughts, the way that we are relating to each other. And we also have to pay attention to the way that my ego, my consciousness here, is relating to the world, right? And then we come to the Coldplay. How am I living my life? La vida, right? How am I living my life? So I would say that pain is unavoidable. I totally agree with Joanna de Angelis. But and we of course we don't need to feel pain, like she says in other religions from the past, that it was kind of cool, we could say, to feel pain, to suffer, because then we were people thought, like medieval times, the dark ages, that they were controlling instincts. And it's so silly, because then we are just causing ourselves suffering and illnesses, right? So we nowadays, we know all of that we have to take care of ourselves, we have to take care of our mental health, that it's really nice that everybody's talking about this these days, so we can go deeper and try not to fall in the trap of the character of this lyric, as Jussara was saying, that we can just guess. But if we are holding the key, so I think I'm like the king of the world, and I want to be like this or that person and have this and that material stuff, and youth and whatever, anything that makes me powerful. And in a certain way, for the ego, it's like cheating death, or even life. I can control life, and it's so silly. We cannot control life. We cannot. This is just our immature egos thinking that we have the key if we are rich or young or beautiful or this and that, because the walls are going to close on us, like the song. And I would say, like, death, I totally agree with you, because it's certain we are going, but death like a portal. Okay, then, like in the spiritist knowledge, we know that it's just a passage to another, let's say, to the life of the spirit. And then everything that was so certain for me, my body, my material stuff, my titles, my youth or whatever, suddenly the walls closed on me, and I discovered that my castles stand upon pillars of salt and sand. So they were nothing, they were gone. So I would say that pain, I totally agree with Jung also, that this is a birth of consciousness. This person, this character, of course, when he discovers, or she, that her or his castle stand upon pillars of sand, right? And they had the castles had to be left behind, because we are not taking material stuff with us to the spiritual dimensions. So of course, then we have the suffering of the soul, that kind of lost time, lost opportunities to grow, to evolve, right? To be healthier. And so I just wanted to tell you that I love this sentence by Joanna, that she says, suffering, therefore, since we are all talking and thinking about that, can and should be considered a disease of the soul, which still clings to sensations favoring paths and actions that produce imbalance. So if I cling and I hold, this is mine, this key is mine, I'm king of the world, right? Well, I'm king of this world for how long? How many minutes, considering comparing to eternity? And of course, I'm building suffering for myself. I think that this is what Joanna is asking us to pay attention. We don't need to suffer. Maybe because of this life is unavoidable, as she says, we are going to feel pain. But suffering is totally different. Suffering, according to Joanna, is a disease of the soul. And our soul doesn't have to get sick, let's say. We can, and we are in the process of evolving, of achieving an expanded consciousness. So we don't need, to pay so much attention to everything that the ego wants, because the ego is living an illusion in a certain way, because it's very concrete and it's very cool that we are here in this school. Let's say people are talking a lot about simulation. It's a simulation for the spirit, let's say, but for the ego, it's it's a reality. It's our reality, right? Here, a reality of learning, a school of learning, as the spiritist knowledge say. But for our higher self, okay, of course, it's an illusion. Like, okay, it's a learning that I'm agreed that I'm going to for some time, and then I'll go back stronger, more wiser, things like that. But I will provoke a little bit Jussara, because I want so much her to talk. There's another sentence, but of course, Marcia, I thought you wanted to tell me something also.
Yeah, I wanted to, and we can talk about after Jussara speaks to your question now. But before we end our conversation, and forgive me, I'm losing my voice. I wanted to bring another aspect, but go ahead, Jussara, if you don't mind.
Okay, so I have to ask the question. It's another sentence of the lyrics.
Which one?
Jussara, what do you think of this one? I know St. Peter won't call my name, never an honest word, but that was when I ruled the world.
Yeah, that's so fantastic. I mean, again, going in this line of thinking that we are, using our imagination to interpret, right? Using the words, and there is one that he says, "Now the old king is dead, and long live the king." I mean, and it goes all together, when he says, "I used to rule the world," being the king, and being in control of everything that I thought were, sturdy things that would be, giving me support and that I could always count on it. But now I'm dead. And people were saying, "Long live the king," like, and open the way for a new one, new ruler to come, right? Used to rule that there is always someone that is going to replace you. So I think that there is this conscience and understanding that now, with a different kind of vision and clear vision, how, and the way it used St. Peter as meaning, the way we understand, the way we have been brought up, many of us in religion, or, from the past, whatever, that St. Peter is the one that holds the keys to heaven, right? To, you did good, come on in, right? Now there is the realization that I did very well. I viva la vida in the physical world, but now from the spiritual perspective, my emotions, they are not in tune with what follows. And this is what brings suffering. I think, to me, suffering is totally related to emotions, to the emotions of the spirit, because even when you are in pain, a physical pain or are suffering any other kind of pain, but if you are centered, right, if you have values, you will go through that in an easier way than others that have different values in life. So I can aggravate my pain by exacerbating my ego and thinking that because I do not deserve those things. I deserve things totally different. This is completely unfair, or, this is the result of other people's faults, and never assuming the responsibility for anything. This is when, suffering is really going to get us harder. And as a consequence, pain, because until I realize that there is so much more to life, and celebrating life as an immortal soul, I will leave a lot of room for, reaping the consequences of my actions.
Absolutely. I appreciate your um, review of this song, right? And one of the things that come to my mind, two couple of things, but the first one was in many philosophies, we correlate um, pain and suffering with being a bad person, right? So you see in literature, we see in music, in movies, where those that are truly good, and this is almost mythological, they don't actually suffer. And yet, somebody like Joseph Campbell brings to us from his beautiful theological review, right, and mythological, that the hero, in its heroic quest, never comes out unscathed, right? And it's beautiful, this idea that for us to go through life and to achieve new plateau of evolution, be it in this life, in a material perspective, or in our eternal life, our spiritual lives, we really need to have the courage to keep at it and build some resilience so that those things that come at us, it's okay. It's part of the quest to become better. But the other thought, if you don't mind, is boy, this conversation is bringing me all over the place. So
Say
my
something
th- yeah,
before we lose the track.
yeah, yeah,
Last week I was listening to a podcast that was talking about Jung's spiritual perspective and
yes,
each. And of course, Dr. Anahy is the expert here. But there was one thing and since you talked about hero, like in the vision of Jung, please tell me if this is right, okay? And vision of Jung, Jesus was the perfect hero. And of course, Nietzsche would never accept that. And when you said, the hero never goes unscathed, I mean, not even Jesus, perfect hero, went
yeah.
without going through pain, not suffering.
Extreme, but extreme
Yeah,
pain, right?
not
Yeah.
suffering, because
Hmm.
then he was centered, balanced, but
Hmm.
definitely pain because he had a physical body. So go ahead.
No, this is awesome. Thank
Is
you for
that
connecting that.
correct?
Yeah,
Is that
yeah,
correct? This idea of Jesus being the hero in Jung's perspective, or
yeah.
We
And
could
back to go ahead, Anaí, please.
say, because for Jung, like, yes, we could say in a sense his life shows the hero myth.
Yeah.
And we have to understand that Jung says one thing, for instance, meaning many things, like the concept, Jung's concept of the self, capital S,
Hmm.
that is the center of the psyche, but at the same time is the totality of the psyche. So he uses, it's a little confusing for people, and we take a lot of time to understand because he's not, he's seeing a lot of things, even his concept of the self that we call a higher self, for instance, not the ego, right? But also the center of the psyche and the totality. Okay, so because, for instance, we can use the self, capital S, as synonym of an imago Dei, like the image of God that we have inside of us. So it's like Jesus, the same thing in a sense, because you can understand his journey as the hero myth of when, because Jesus comes as a man, but when he connects to the Christ consciousness, then he's Jesus the Christ. And then he is a whole, in a whole. The Father and I are one, in a sense that he connected to the source with God, with the Christ consciousness. Then we can use this as the hero myth is the myth of the birth of consciousness, and the struggle of the ego to get to a point of a higher consciousness of individuation, of being uh, more whole in this world, and individuate, like express the totality of your soul as much as you can. We can look at this like this, but at the same time, the Christ is an example for Jung in psychological terms, and symbolic, okay, totally symbolic, of the higher consciousness, the Christ. Okay, so it could be the same thing. As I understand, people can have different approaches, but if we talk about the hero's myth, the birth of consciousness, the struggle of the ego to connect with the higher self, in a sense, the ego self-access, that we say, this conversation between the ego and the self, and struggling for individuation, for our consciousness to expand, in a sense, getting closer with the unconscious aspects, to to be more whole, to be like to our, so that our psyche, our souls can express and have a balance between all our dualities. We say integrate as much as possible our dualities. So this would be the journey of the hero, right? But then the Christ would be our, let's say, as much as we can, this sparkle of the God of gods that we have within us, and that Joanna says that it's Jung self, capital S, is our spirit. So when we think about the spirit, our higher spirit is so beautiful, because we understand what Jesus was telling us, that everything that he did, we could achieve also. We could do what we thought as miracles because of our spiritual ignorance, was all his wisdom and all his connection to the Christ consciousness with God, that simply here was expressed in a beautiful way in his journey, that seemed like miracles. I can imagine myself up to this day, sometimes we have quantum physics and things like that, but wow, healing someone just by touching, just by talking to the person, just by embracing the person. Of course, he was healing deeply in even with physics that we don't understand. How we hardly understand a little bit of concepts of quantum physics, and we don't know how to join with mechanics, physics, and all this stuff, people are still, the physicists are still searching a theory of everything. Imagine that. We want to explain everything. Yes, go ahead, keep trying, people. 2,000 years, we keep trying to understand what Jesus told us, but it's cool because we need to keep trying. We need to face our fears, our shadows. That is something really cool that Jussara talked about, and Marcia also about Joe Campbell, right? And mythologist, great American mythologist, and that talks about the hero's myth, our struggle to develop consciousness and to be more whole here, to express our soul, and also to be in contact with our personal myth, our sacred story. What are we doing here? And to find, that's why we say that Jung's psychology is depth psychology, because it's depth. It goes to the depths of the psyche, and where the story of our evolution as spirits. So the story of our soul here, what are we doing here? So I think this is, it's wonderful that you talked about that, because it in the introduction of Plenitudes, the book that we are using today, beautiful, beautiful book by Joanna de Angelis, she says that the spirit needs to polish the edges that hide his light. Isn't that beautiful? And I was reading again and said, okay, we need, as spirits, we are here learning to polish the edges that hide our lights, right? Inner lights. And then it came to me the concept of the shadow. And when we are talking about suffering and pain, and when we face our shadows, the ego is always going to feel pain, emotional pain. I don't want. I was, I was with my key. I was the ruler of the world, as Jussara said, that I was the king. And next minute, I'm nothing. So I had all this power, right? And people were envious of me, right? Because I was the king, I had all this power. But what was in my shadow? What was there, lying there, that I couldn't see? And that I knew that Saint Peter wouldn't call my name, because exactly as Jussara said, well, I achieved a lot of things in this material world, but for Saint Peter to call my name, what is my achievement in for my spirit, for my soul? What have I learned, right? What I'm clinging to, that it's like making my journey harder, not in the physical sense maybe, but in the spiritual sense. So when Jonah says the spirit needs to polish the edges that hide his light, okay, we have to get in contact with our shadows, so that we are polishing our edges, right, our shadows. And she says, and for that reason, suffering is a normal occurrence which knowledge and willpower can direct in a balanced way, so that suffering can fulfill its sublime purpose. Isn't that beautiful?
Yeah, can I just add a couple of things that are popping in my
Go
mind, because this is
ahead.
beautiful. Number one, if you were to kind of connect the dots, right? The first thing is, um, pain is part of evolution, right? It's part of our evolving spirit. It's found everywhere. It's found, and that's what I wanted to perhaps, if I may, bring the amazing Lebanese poet Khalil Gibran, right? His words on pain is really speak to me because he says, your pain is the breaking of the shell that encloses your understanding.
Wow, I love.
And he keeps going. It's beautiful. Even as the stone of the fruit must break, that its heart may stand in the sun, so must you know pain. And could you keep your heart in wonder at the daily miracles of your life, your pain would not seem less wondrous than your joy. And you would accept the seasons of your heart, even as you have always accepted the seasons that pass over the fields. And you would watch with serenity through the winters of your grief. And I see that basically, Jussara, going back to Coldplay with the loss, the sense of loss. And then he closes with what you were saying just now, Anahy, right? As the suffering is really part of our decisions. But Khalil Gibran says much of your pain is self-chosen, right? It is the bitter potion by which the physician within you heals your sick self. Therefore, trust the physician, drink this remedy in silence and tranquility, for his hand, though heavy and hard, is guided by the tender hand of the unseen. And the cup he brings, though it burns your lips, has been fashioned of the clay which the potter, capital P, has moistened with his, capital H, own sacred tears. And I just think, my goodness, what inspiring words that he brings to us. And if we think again, connecting the dots, right? Pain, part of evolution, just like Khalil Gibran speaks here, but suffering really reflects our psychological and spiritual maturity because it really correlates on how we see, right? How we interpret perhaps the pain, and it really it references the our existential our existential behavior and the words that come to my mind are really resilience, right? Do I have I um, created and develop resilience through all that I have to go through. And then it goes back to what you're talking about, the individuation, right? Jesus as the ultimate hero, and how we can see that through the journey, and Jesus was already there, by the way, but how in that journey that we too one day will be Christ like, right? We need to understand no longer our duality within, but to look at our shadows, as you put it so beautifully, Dr. Nai, um, and we bring toward that individuation, that integration of who we are. That includes, and this is the last thing that comes to my mind, a book that really I read when I was a young kid, and it completely, I would have nightmares with this. So that's the portrait of Dorian Gray, right? Where Dorian Gray, he creates, right? He creates this other self where the portrait kept all the pain, all the suffering, everything, the aging, and he kept pure, if you will. And that is, it can be seen or interpreted as the shadow is the portrait, right? The shadow contains everything that you reject. And yet, life, the hero journey, is one that is beautiful and that will contain pain, right? But we need to celebrate it with love and with this sense of wonder, which is I am not going to live a life that is of suffering because I am going to uh, give a new meaning to suffering, which is this is what I have to do, like Khalil Gibran said, right? It's the shell that I must break because that shell contained, enclose my understanding, my clarity of what ultimately I need to go through in life.
It's beautiful, beautiful, and I'm really glad that you mentioned Kaluja. I used to read when I was a teenager,
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
and and I want to tell you an example, personal example, because nowadays the city that I am here in Brazil, it's in the very south of Brazil, is suffering a lot with floods, a lot of water, and the water is bringing a lot of course, unclean things,
Yeah.
as usually happens, and possibility of disease, and it's
Mhm.
the whole of the state is suffering with that. And one of the things, since we're talking about suffering, is that the suffering will depend on the way that we look, exactly as you said, Khalil Gibran was talking about, the way that we look. Of course, we're going to suffer to lose things and to be afraid, because the ego is always afraid and is in connection with the material world. But if we try to understand that, for instance, we are talking about water in this example that I'm leaving. So the water in all the main religions, it's a symbol of purification, cleanless, rebirth. Okay, so if I look to the waters afraid of death, because people are always afraid of that. And it's so beautiful that we have the spiritist knowledge that nobody dies. This is an illusion. We just, go through a portal, and if we struggle, as Joanna de Angelis is saying, willpower and increase our knowledge, then it's so beautiful, this moment of traveling back to our original dimension, the dimension of the spirit. I always remember a ship arriving, not leaving, but arriving, and everybody in the port really happy. Wow, here she comes, or he comes again. And look at all that he or she has learned, and the light that is shining brighter. We are talking about, Joanna was talking about polishing our edges light, so that our light can shine brighter. So the thing is that if we do this coming back, right, and understand that if I can look at the waters and don't be afraid, and see the waters uh, make, helping us, right, to expand our consciousness, helping us to clean our shadows, helping us not to cling to material things, and to find the value of ourselves. I am what I am in my spirit, in not only what I'm here now. Okay, now, okay, Dr. Anahy, but who knows? Yesterday I was whatever, and tomorrow I will be whatever else, so somebody else, and whatever I will be, for considering the need of my spirit to learn different experiences. So if I look at the waters, the water fertilize, and always after a storm, the sun is shining, always, because the sun is always shining. Is only, the clouds and the rain that can makes us hear from down below. But I'm here down below, and my higher self, my spirit, maybe we know that in sleeping we are far away, for instance. So if I train my vision to look, in an expanded view, in a more spiritual view, then maybe I'm not going to suffer so much. And maybe I will see all the love, the helping, the coming together that all difficult situations when we are in a collective that is suffering for whatever reason, usually we are going to have people that are going unexpectedly is going to give you some help, give you love from you were not expecting, the least you were least expecting. So this is the spiritual value that comes in this really sad moments for our egos, but if we can try to find this more and struggle, having the willpower, as Joanna says, to expand our consciousness and our vision, then I'm sure we are going to get there. And St. Peter will call our names.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We are at the end of our time. We will continue in a couple additional episodes this discussion on suffering. I just wanted to bring to everybody's attention Dr. Anahy Fonseca lives in the southernmost state of Brazil, Rio Grande do Sul. And if you have not seen that, the news, but late April through most of May, that state went through an inordinate amount of rainfalls that flooded pretty much the entire state, even outside of it in the neighboring country of Uruguay, some of the cities. So it is with an incredible sense of gratitude that we have you here with us, Dr. Anahy, especially the fact of all the disruptions that are going on. I also wanted to call out that Jussara was the mind behind an event to help with a number of individuals to bring light to that. That tragedy, right? That we're seeing the nature coming in and somehow becoming nonsensical in its fear, just this tremendous catastrophic power. But with that, I just want to say we will continue our discussion. We are at time, and wanted to say thank you both. Thank you, Jussara. I don't know if you want to give a final words before we say goodbye.
Yeah, well, actually, I, I'm just reflecting about everything that was said, and the only thing that I was thinking is that sometimes, people may say, "Why do you talk so much about suffering?" It's because there is so much suffering around us. There is so much pain, and perhaps with you, we can be together and we can share that, and you will see that it visits each and every one of us, and try to understand why we go through all those processes. We can bring some comfort. We can put some balm in your souls, in your heart. And I think this is the main reason why we really bring this topic, although we understand that it's quite hard. It's quite hard to talk about it, and to hear about it, to listen about to this topic as well, but it's so necessary. Thank you so
Yes.
much. Thank you, Anahy. Thank you, Marcia.
All right. With that, I want to say we'll see you next time when we continue with these topics. Thanks, everyone, and see you next week.
Bye bye.